Member for North Vancouver, Seymour.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'd like to continue on with a few questions in the lines that I started yesterday. And I updated my printout that I had yesterday from marinetraffic.com and got my staff again to print out all the traffic, marine traffic that's outside our coasts. I was absolutely stunned to learn that the red dots are all oil tankers in the world. There's quite a few on the coast here.
Member, there are not to be any use of props, as the
No,
member
no
well
props.
knows.
Okay, I'll just count them then. So that's the world, but right now at 9:30 in the morning, we discovered that around Vancouver, Surrey, down to Bellingham, across the way from Victoria, Port Angeles, and around the southern coast of Vancouver Island. There are currently right now at 9:30 in the morning, 4 tankers, but right outside in the open water, we count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 tankers, and right near the coast of Bellingham, there's another one. So yesterday, when we were canvassing questions, the minister said, and I quote, this is with regards to a question that I had of whether or not he was concerned about the ocean protection plan that the federal government announced. And I quote the minister, "We have no reason to think that the commitment of the federal government to spend that money to protect the Pacific coast of Canada is at risk. No, I'm not concerned." But today, I discovered we have a new concern. As published in the Alberni Valley News today, new spill response bases are now on hold as the pipeline is paused. Future of 6 new bases, 125 jobs on Vancouver Island in limbo over Kinder Morgan decision. Michael Lowry, who's the manager of communications for Western Canada Marine Response Corporation, says they've halted all capital investments on 6 new spill bases at Sydney, Beecher Bay, Ucluelet, Nanaimo, Richmond, and Port Alberni. They go on to say that, and I quote, and this is a quote from the Port Alberni Port Authority CEO Zoran Knezek, "We're disappointed that Kinder Morgan has halted their decision and that subsequently put on hold the development of the Western Canada Marine Response Corporation project here." He said the spill response base in Port Alberni would have employed 22 people and 5 or 6 vessels, and they are making it a significant loss to the West Coast marine community. These bases were going to be for any kind of spill. They will be a significant loss if they don't go forward. My question to the minister then is, doesn't the minister think or agree that the loss of these bases is actually increasing our oil spill response risk?
Minister.
Thank you, Chair. The member apparently is confusing the Ocean Protection Plan with the West Coast Marine Response Centre, which is the organization that she is referencing in her statements. The West Coast Marine funded. They're working on $150 million of improvements that are planned for all marine traffic up and down the coast, but it is not funded by the Ocean Protection Plan.
Member.
Thank you, Chair. No, I'm quite aware of that. This is funded by industry. And these funds and these bases and this intense increase of oil spill response is dependent on industry. And the construction of those bases and the ability for British Columbia, at least, to be able to bump up their oil spill response is dependent on the Kinder Morgan project. That was my point. But what I worry about is not so much the tankers that are in British Columbia waters. It's the number of tankers that are actually not British Columbian, they're American, and they are in or around British Columbia waters. And we all know that it doesn't really matter whether or not it's Canada waters or United States waters, it's water. And if there's a spill on their side, it's coming over to our land and vice versa. So my other question to the minister is, does the minister know how many oil tankers travel from Alaska to American states per month?
Sure.
Thank you, Chair. And first, I'd just like to, for the record, correct, I referred to West Coast Marine Response Center. It's actually West Coast Marine Response Corporation, but everything else about the answer is correct. I'd like to say to the member that I appreciate that she is concerned about any threat of any spill from any tanker that could affect BC waters, because the waters don't know the border. She's quite correct, and that's why I would invite the member to join us in assuring that we have the greatest protection possible. Perhaps what the member could do, because I'm sure she has a relationship with the Parliamentary Secretary to the Environment Minister of Canada, Jonathan Wilkinson, an MP on the North Shore, that she might want to have a meeting with him and urge him to ensure that there is no tailing off of the federal government's commitment to the Ocean Protection Plan, and impress upon him how important this is to British Columbia. I think British Columbians would all appreciate that. Historically, there's been about one tanker a day coming down the west coast from Alaska. The member for Abbotsford West, I think, referenced that in an earlier discussion, but there has been some tailing off of production, so there may be a reduction in the number of tankers, in fact, and we will get that information and provide it to the member, or at least to the record, when we have it.
Member.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Yes, but the Western Canada Marine Response Corporation, I wish they would get a different acronym, operates on funding by the industry and is regulated by the federal government. I'm aware of that. But these new bases, the vessels and the spill response equipment that I referred to earlier, were part of the conditions of the pipeline's approval by the National Energy Board. $150 million was earmarked for a spill response plan and was expected to provide 125 jobs, but they have said that money will not come from industry and the new bases will not proceed because of the uncertainty with the Trans Mountain issue that's going on right now. So my question, getting back to the other tankers, regardless of what's going on with regards to Trans Mountain currently, or when they twin the pipeline, if that does get built, my concern is the amount of tanker traffic that is occurring today now. And that's why I looked on the website and this World Tanker Traffic website and was astonished to see how many tankers are there outside our waters today at 9:30 in the morning. So that's why I asked the question about whether or not the minister was familiar with how many were going by every month. And certainly it's a lot, and we should be concerned. So the minister has said that he's committed to the protection of BC's coast. We all are, which is highlighted by the opposition to Kinder Morgan. But has the minister then been in contact with his counterparts in the United States to talk to them about whether or not they would reduce their traffic of oil tankers outside of our waters?
Minister.
Thank you, Chair. And I share the member's concern about the potential risks from tanker traffic, and that's precisely why I and many British Columbians are concerned about a 7-fold increase in tanker traffic in the Salish Sea. I have not personally had any discussion with counterparts in the state of Washington, but as I entered into the record in response to 2 or 3 questions yesterday, and it's in Hansard, officials from the ministry work regularly with officials from Washington State and other Pacific states on oil spill prevention, preparedness, response and recovery. There are joint planning exercises, drills, and we work very closely on those matters.
Member.
Thank you very much, Chair. Does the minister have confidence right now in the current oil spill regime?
Minister.
Thank you, Chair. Could the member clarify whether she's referring to land or water?
Member.
Thank you. I'm talking about the oil spill regime response on our coast, in the water.
Minister.
Thank you, Chair. Well, the simple answer to the member's question is no, we don't think the response is adequate, and neither did the previous government. That's why they passed new authorities under the Environmental Management Act, which we have picked up and carried forward through Phase 1 and now Phase 2 of the spill control regulations. We think it's important to ensure that we have geographically appropriate response plans, that we have response times that actually get resources to an area of a spill in time to ensure that that there is a chance to effectively clean up the spill. In fact, a high probability and likelihood. We're out consulting on that, on those details at the moment. There are other aspects, as the member knows, to the Phase 2 regulations, including the extension of BC's regulatory authority to marine applications where a spill can wash up on our shoreline, which I assume is what the member's talking about. And the federal government, in turn, also doesn't believe it's adequate. That's why they've designed a $150 million ocean protection plan for Canada's 3 oceans that they believe clearly that protections are inadequate all over. Technology is changing, knowledge is changing. That's why they're spending $45 million on research into the behavior of heavy oil, into what are appropriate measures to prevent a spill, what are appropriate measures to respond to and recover from a spill. We have ongoing conversations with the federal government around that research. We're on the advisory panel that is deciding how to focus and target that $45 million. They, in turn, have been giving us input on terms of reference for our scientific advisory panel to look at existing and new research. I think it's in everyone's interest that we continually work to improve our oil spill response and recovery capacity, as well as measures that can prevent the necessity to use them at all.
Member.
Thank you, Chair. So if the minister currently does not have faith in the current oil spill regime, I have then 2 questions. Why is he allowing any tankers anywhere in Canadian waters? Why isn't he advocating for the United States tankers to stop going up and down our coast? And why is he putting at risk this new $150 million earmark for spill response plan from the Western Canada Marine Response Corporation that's contingent on this project?
Minister.
Thank you, Chair. And first of all, I think I misspoke myself earlier. The Ocean Protections Plan is $1.5 billion for 3 oceans. The BC share of that is $450 million. And the answer to the question posed by the member is it's not the jurisdiction of British Columbia to stop tanker traffic off the BC coast. Certainly, we have expressed concerns, and certainly as we develop these regulations and talk about the marine application of them, we will be concerned and will discover, and British Columbians will bring forward, as will First Nations, a number of concerns about a range of transportation mechanisms of petroleum products, that how far off the coast they are, whether they're in shipping lanes, how near to the coastline or dangerous waters they are, and we'll certainly continue to communicate our concerns to the federal government.
Member.
Thank you very much, Chair. So I guess my, closing down my questions, would the minister then not agree that expanding the response, the spill response rate, which is offered with the new ocean protection plan, the minister has clarified it's $450 million for British Columbia waters, as well as the Western Canada Marine Response Corporation increased investments and plan with these bases and vessels, would the minister not agree that this is a good move to help protect British Columbia waters from an oil spill?
Minister.
Thank you, Chair. I think the member has stated some points with which hopefully we all agree, that there's a concern about the risk to our coast from tanker traffic, and we should take every measure that we can to prevent a spill and then to be prepared in the hopefully unlikely event one happens. The way to ensure that that event is unlikely is to ensure that everything that can be done is done to prevent a spill in the first place. But what the minister or what the member is stating is essentially that there's 150 million private sector investment at risk to protect BC's coast, which I would agree is inappropriate. But I think to ensure that a small amount of money comes forward, we should say nothing or do nothing to take measures to prevent risk and to be prepared to respond and recover oil in the event of a spill. I think doesn't resonate with me. I don't think resonates with British Columbians and doesn't make a lot of sense. Sorry, it was 125 million, not 150 million. Oh, it is 150 million. I'm getting notes as we speak. But in terms of the 122 jobs that are, I assume, and I hope temporarily suspended from the slowdown in the activity on the Western Canada Marine Response Corporation, the member has numerous times in the legislature spoken about how important the film industry in BC is, and I agree with the member. And the truth is that one of the things that brings films to British Columbia is our reputation and the reality of our beautiful environment, our coastline. It features heavily in many films, and the film industry supports more than 60,000 direct and indirect jobs, and that's a concern to me as well, and I assume it's a concern to the member, and she would agree that we should continue what the previous premier under her party urged us to do, which is to stand up for British Columbians. That's what we're doing. I move that the committee rise and report progress and ask leave to sit again.
Members have heard the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. This committee is adjourned.